Welcome to Climate Change with Scott Amyx. I'm your host, Scott, and today I'm joined by Timothy Sykes, who is the CEO of Millionaire Media and also the author of American Hedge Fund. Welcome, Tim.
Hey, thank you for having me.
All right, so my understanding is that I guess, after your Bar Mitzvah as a youth, I guess you were gifted some $12,000 and you did something with that money. During your college years. Maybe you could share us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so, the money was just sitting in like Series EE bonds for like 5 years. I was a tennis player, but I got injured senior year of high school, had surgery on my arm, so I couldn't play tennis anymore. The stock market was going crazy, so my parents gave me control of the 12 grand, thinking that I would lose it all, thinking that it would be a good lesson. I would learn the value of $1. But senior year of high school, I turned the 12 grand into over 100 grand. And before I graduated college, it was $2 million, and now I've made $5 million, just trading low price stocks in and out, lots of small gains added up. So it wasn't the lesson that my parents intended, but I just bought them a new place in Miami Beach. So they're pretty happy with the lesson that, we got from it.
So I just want to make sure I understand, Tim. So your parents are thinking, okay, we're going to teach him a hard lesson about how to properly manage, because you went from totally risk averse, no risk asset class to essentially pure speculation. I mean, we're talking about penny stocks, right?
Yeah. So
they really taught you a lesson. It looks like you really learned it. Is that right?
I mean, obviously penny stocks are risky. I don't want your audience to think otherwise. But my rule number one is I cut losses quickly. So, my parents, they had taught me responsibility and being conservative all my life. So I wasn't just going to throw my money into the wind and use leverage. So I've been wrong a lot, but by cutting losses quickly, my average loss is 1%, 2%, 3%. And then my average gain is 5%, 10%, 15%. When you have bigger gains and, smaller losses and you win on a percentage basis more than you lose, your account grows. So it was kind of crazy to think about it, but if you actually drill down into the numbers, it's not totally insane.
Well, I mean, I'm kidding a little bit, but what you're really talking about is technical analysis. It's really looking for moving averages, looking for certain key triggers. That's looking to see if it's breaking the floor, the ceiling, those sort of things. But you picked up on a really important point, which is this notion of cutting your losses. And I think something that the college system, or maybe even as early as high school economics, don't really necessarily prepare us very well, is this notion of long-term investing. I used to have my Series 7, 63, 65 life, was working towards my CFP. So I have some sense of what I'm talking about, but we're kind of always taught to think in terms of long-term. You're investing for the long term. You got a long time horizon to an effectively. But what we're really not taught is to cut our losses sooner. And I think if you look at the .com bust and you look at the Great Recession, and then you look at the cryptocurrency bust a couple of years back, a lot of money could have been preserved and protected had we cut our losses. So talk to us about what is the definition of speculation versus calculated risk reward formulas?
Yeah, no, great question. We're taught mainly just to invest in good companies. Maybe you'll be, a millionaire after 30, 40, 50 years. But I do think that you can time the market, not every day, and it's not a perfect science. But even now with the coronavirus, I frankly have been too conservative the past 2 or 3 years, thinking that the bull market was done and just underestimating everything. But I didn't get more aggressive the more wrong that I got. I got safer and safer saying, this is crazy. Now with the coronavirus, really taking apart the U.S. markets and the global markets, you just have to understand that stocks and the economy moves in waves. So you can only have an up wave for so long. There's an inevitable down wave, and that involves, overall economies on a global scale and individual companies too. So with cryptocurrency, for example, I rode it on the way up and I underestimated it. I was trading crypto stocks, not crypto itself, but a lot of the stocks I was trading with, they were just surging so much. And when crypto got to like 8 or 10,000 Bitcoin, I was just like, this is crazy. It eventually went to 20,000, so I underestimated it, but I protected myself and my students on the way down. So I don't think it's an exact science of, you can't predict how high something will go or how low something will go, But if you understand that things move in waves and that it's good to take profits into strength, you can do really well in the markets and in life. Like this analogy applies to life. Like if you're in a toxic relationship, a lot of people just hold on far too long thinking that it's going to change. You just cut losses quickly. Like I don't have any time for toxic people these days. If someone says something really negative and like twisted to me on social media, I just block them. I'm like, I don't want that in my feed. I don't want that in my life.
So I think if I understood you correctly, the principles that you learn in terms of investing can be applied to romance and relationships.
And life, even like
actually, from a timing perspective, it's actually quite uncanny because I think there is a very popular show on Netflix that talks about this kind of relationship. And perhaps maybe one of the lessons learned needs to be cut your losses quickly.
100%. Like life is short, and you want to expect the best in people. You want things to turn around, but sometimes it's just not. Some people are just messed up in the head. Sometimes stocks, a lot of penny stocks, they're just not going to go up, no matter their best intentions. So you have to recognize that and accept failure. And I think in society, we're not conditioned to accept failure. Like we always want something better. We're always trying to, improve. And unfortunately, sometimes you just have to cut losses, and that is the best decision. So I've had a lot of times where I believed in a penny stock, I believed in the technology, but for whatever reason, it didn't work out. Most penny stock companies fail. So it's not a surprise once you start seeing how many failures there are. And, the same thing with the US economy and bull markets, like you knew that something had to come up to end this, multi-decade bull market. I didn't know it was going to be a deadly virus that, is probably not necessarily going to kill as many people as it's going to kill the economy, because frankly, people should stay indoors. That's like the best way to prevent this. Everyone's asking me, how do you prevent coronavirus? A lot of people are wearing the surgical mask. That scientifically does not protect you against the virus. The best thing that you can do is stay indoors, avoid crowded areas, and wash your hands more. So you have to recognize the world for what it is and just, be as safe as possible.
All right, so let's talk about kind of your career progression in terms of, I think you self-describe yourself as a stock trader and a teacher, and you run Millionaire Media. So perhaps make it talk to us about your organization. What does it do? And what kinds of techniques and lessons are you teaching?
Yeah, so, I had taken the $12,000 into $2 million, and like a cocky college kid, I thought I could do anything. I thought I could take the $2 million and turn it into $2 billion. I didn't understand scalability. I didn't understand the limitations of trading penny stocks. So I ran a hedge fund for 3 years, really only managed, $3 million in assets. We were making 20% per year, which is, good, but on a monetary scale, it's just nothing. And so then I went for it, investing in my best friend's dad's company. It was print at home ticketing. I was right about the technology, wrong about the company, lost a third of my fund, got vilified by the press. But I was on this TV show called Wall Street Warriors, which became a hit back in 2007, 2008. And I started getting emails saying, hey, I want to turn 12,000 into 2 million. So closed down the hedge fund, not because investors wanted their money back. I was still up, 2% per year over 4 years, which wasn't great, but it wasn't like a blow up. But I saw more opportunity in teaching because, there's this old saying, teachers are those who can't do, but I recognized that I could do. And the big loss really crystallized my risk management and my rules. So I got into teaching because of the TV show. And I've been teaching ever since. So now I have 9,000 students worldwide. We have a chat room. We have video lessons, live webinars. I have 5 millionaire students so far. My student, Tim Grittani, just passed $10 million in profits literally 2 days ago. Made double what I've made now in half the time because, frankly, he's a better trader. And I'm a better teacher than I am trader. So you have to recognize your strengths and your weaknesses in life and take advantage of the opportunities.
So what exactly are you teaching?
Just everything about penny stocks. Like most people come to me, they've been scammed by penny stocks. They didn't know that it was a scam. They didn't read my blog. On my blog, timothysykes.com, I have 8,000 blog posts. I expose a lot of scams, but unfortunately people read the blog post too late. So they lose all their money. They start Googling around, and then they see my blog post that would have protected them had they known about me earlier. So I'm teaching how to spot scams. I mean, they're pretty obvious. The Wolf of Wall Street might be out of business, but there's lots of little wolves all around. And you just basically have to read the SEC filings, and you can read when a company has no cash, when they're very, questionable business practices. So I teach about that and how to short sell, because you can actually make money when these stocks go down.
So let me...
Excuse me, sorry. Yeah. I'm feeling a little under the weather too.
Well, I hope you feel better.
Thank you.
So let's talk a little bit about, from the perspective of whether it's the SEC or just, let's say, investors, right? So when we talk about investment asset classes and the risk characteristics, we think in terms of suitability and sophistication. The fact that some of your students may be retail investors versus accredited investors, wealthy investors, sophisticated investors, and certainly not institutional investors, playing in a more very risky asset class like, pink sheets and penny stocks and, delisted assets. How does that fit into suitability? And can you give us kind of a description of the kind of average, if there's even an average type of student that you're training?
Yeah. So, I mean, suitability, like if you already have $1 million or $2 or $5 million, most accredited investors, penny stocks are irrelevant. They just don't move the needle. So my average student, starts with an account of $2,000, $3,000, maybe $4,000. And the whole goal is how do you, really be meticulous and trade like a sniper where you can make $100, $200, $300 on a trade and it adds up. Like I said, Tim Grittani just passed $10 million in profits. He started with 1,500. That's an extreme thing. Like, no one else is going to do that. Don't think like everyone's going to turn a few thousand into a few million. But the average investor and the average trader, frankly, they should not be investing in mutual funds. Like if you have $2,000 to your name and you're trying to make 10, 20% per year, it's just not going to add up anytime in the near future to be anything meaningful. So it's a speculative strategy for small accounts. Again, rule number one is cut losses quickly. So if you can make $200, $300, $500 on a trade, lose maybe $50 or $75, and then scale up. The key is that I teach a process where you're learning how to profit from different patterns that repeat again and again. Like, yes, there are scams, many scams in penny stocks, but you can short sell them when you find shares to short. Sometimes there's no shares to short. But then there's also, like a world crisis like the coronavirus, or there's a hot sector like crypto or marijuana stocks. And we find very similar patterns where you can, profit into the hysteria. There's a mask maker with the ticker APT, terrible company, hardly any fundamentals, hardly any cash, but now people want masks. So during the Ebola virus, it went from 3 to 12, which was crazy. Now during coronavirus, it went from 3 to 40 and already back down to 16 because it got ahead of itself. All the executives bailed out at 30. This is the kind of pattern repetition and manias that I teach how to profit from.
So just to be clear, you're providing training around essentially day trading or active trading as defined by 4 days of consecutive round trips of active trading. And it also extends beyond penny stock to, you mentioned categories like marijuana and cryptocurrencies. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, any low price speculative company, companies that don't have a lot of cash, they don't have a lot of assets, they have these pipe dream products. And you find that, they sell the dream very well. And then the executives either, sell out at inflated prices like the mask maker APT, their executives cashed in like $30 million worth of stock all within 2 days. Or sometimes they do a financing, which gives the company money to survive over the next few years. And then the corporate executives pay themselves inflated salaries every year. So it's a very sketchy niche. But at the same time, I think that it can be useful if you have a small account and you learn the nuances and subtleties of the niche.
Yeah. So talking about cryptocurrencies, which is one of those incredibly volatile asset class with incredible highs and lows vacillations. And then again, you're talking about, okay? Looks like you may need to do some isolation.
I might have coronavirus myself. I don't even know. I do this all, understand, while I'm traveling with my charity foundation. We just built our 68th school. So I was in Bali last week. So I'm trading in the middle of the night, opening schools during the day. It's a crazy schedule.
I completely understand. So really, I think the point that I wanted to just kind of explore just a little bit more is, again, going back to suitability, is that the asset classes that they're potentially participating is incredibly risky. Yes. And then they themselves, we're talking about very, very small micro retail investors with small amounts. Isn't that kind of completely the opposite of suitability and appropriateness?
Yes, when I first got started teaching, everyone's like, don't encourage people to trade penny stocks. You're crazy. Even when I got started trading penny stocks, I don't think anybody really grows up to say, hey, I want to be a penny stock trader in life. But I do find there are good opportunities for small investors and traders, which are not applicable in large cap names. There's a lot of the time, there's a time delay. Like the mask maker APT didn't go from 3 to 40 right when coronavirus broke out. It went from 3 to 6, then back down to 4 the next day, then up to 5, then back down to 4, then the next day 8, then the next day 20, then the next day 40. So you have some time delays, which again, none of this matters for big managers and big traders who want to make millions of dollars on a trade, but you can make a few $100s or a few $1,000s on these patterns.
Yeah. Now you started to allude a while back about some claims or concerns that's been posted on the internet about some of the work that you've done. Can you elaborate a little bit more in terms of maybe kind of that delay or just what kinds of articles that they're reading?
Yeah, I mean, there's conspiracy theories galore. I've heard that, my dad trades my account. I've heard that, first of all, I have imposters too, where now imposters are claiming that they're Tim Sykes and they're managing other people's money. For the record, I do not manage anybody's money. I just teach and I trade with a small account. A lot of people say, oh, I'm like many of the people in my industry who use their subscribers to make big profits. Like in a penny stock chat room, typically the guru buys the stock, everyone follows, the guru sells for a profit, everyone else loses. For me, I specifically put out a watch list and video lesson ahead of time, most of the time predicting my trades. I also go back to $12,000 every year, my starting amount, just to show how to grow a small account, and I donate all of my profits to charity. For me, it's about teaching the process rather than just the trades, and that's why I'm very more likely to brag about my students' gains than my own these days. So I make much more from teaching than from trading, especially considering I donate all of my trading profits to charity. So I want to be 100% real. I show every single trade publicly. My dad does not trade my account. It is all me. But, there's a lot of doubt when you say, hey, I want to teach you to be a millionaire. I turned a few thousand into a few million. So I'm not concerned or even fazed about any doubts. It's pretty cool to be able to say this publicly. That's why I said, like before the interview, literally ask me anything you want. I love being real in this industry because most people in my industry, in penny stocks, in gurus who teach online, are just fake and they have stuff to hide. I do not.
So let's transition to talk about climate change. You mentioned charities. If you could talk a little bit about charities, but ultimately, you're on a climate change podcast. Why is climate change important to you?
Yeah, so I mean, I am not the typical environmentalist, but throughout my travels, I've seen a lot. I've been to over 127 countries now. We started building schools with my charity, the Timothy Sykes Foundation, 3 years ago. I built one school in Laos, actually 2 schools in Laos, one in Cambodia, then one in Bali, and I was just hooked because I see how far my money can go in these third world countries. Took on a partner with this photographer. His name is Matt Bad. He's a great photographer where we don't just donate money, but we also visit the communities, take pictures, talk about it on social media, and we changed the name from the Timothy Sykes Foundation to the Karma Gawa Foundation. My partner is Filipino, so Gawa in the Tagalog language of the Philippines means to do or to make. So we're basically making good karma. So we donate the money, we build the school, and then we share it on social media. And like I said before, we've now built 68 schools and libraries around the world. The cool thing is that our social media followers for Karma Gawa have now built another 25. So it was all just supposed to be about education at first, but while we're traveling, we're seeing a lot of the impact with climate change and a lot of species that are going extinct. So we did a documentary on saving the rhino down in South Africa. We did a documentary on the coral reefs. I actually have this shirt that says Save the Reef. So we started coming out with charity merch just to help people understand that there are problems. Because when you dive down, I don't know if you're a diver, but the coral reefs around the world are dying and most people don't even know.
Yeah, that's a really great point, and I think it's a lot more complex, isn't it? If you could talk a little bit about the acidification of the ocean, And what do you think are some of the kind of the bigger issues that's contributing to it? And of course, the microplastics in the waters as well.
Yeah, I mean, literally nothing is simple. Everyone wants it to be black and white. The plastics are contributing. The chemicals that we use are contributing. I mean, if you want to talk about palm oil, that's a massive problem. What seems to be the main problem around the world is that we prioritize pricing and convenience over the environment and the planet. And it's taking a greater and greater portion of the planet away from us, like whether, different species are going extinct, or we're probably going to lose the coral reefs, or, there's probably going to be more plastic than fish in the ocean in the next few decades. It's not any one problem. And I think the key to really changing things is awareness. I'm very proud of what Greta Thunberg has done with her movement, and really just Leonardo DiCaprio and so many more people and so many more charities are trying to get the word out to the younger generations, because it's the younger generations that are going to sadly face the toughest consequences of all this, just lack of action, really. And I think that social media, even though, people rip on it and they say, oh, you shouldn't be on social media that much, getting the word out is key. So it's not just about donating money. Like, you can't, buy your way out of this. We need to change people's behavior, using less plastic, shopping more locally, like looking at the ingredients of what you support, recognizing that, even if you buy a toothpaste that has palm oil, recognize that that small tube of toothpaste is just a very small piece of the problem. And now palm oil plantations are destroying forests around the world. Orangutans are going extinct. So there's a lot of problems, but I am proud that Karmagawa, not only have we donated $4.5 million to different charities for schools and environmental issues, but we just passed 1 million followers on social media. People are sharing our photos and videos. They want to help. They just need kind of instructions how. And I'm proud that, this Save the Reef merch is actually made out of recycled plastic bottles. There's more and more sustainable fashion that's coming up, because, fashion is a big problem with the environment. We don't realize how much water and energy it uses just to make a simple shirt. So becoming aware of this stuff and talking about it is the key.
Yeah, so while I agree with you that one of the most important aspects is awareness and discussion around some of these bigger topics, one of the things that concerns me personally is exploitation of charities and certain status, meaning influencers and even celebrities who potentially are standing for a particular cause, but underneath their foundation, underneath that cause, underneath the money that they raise, what's really happening and why are they doing it? But what are your thoughts around using things like climate change as a way to really, propel their own selfish ambitions rather than truly make an impact?
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. I mean, a lot of celebrities, influencers want to look good. So like they'll say like, oh, no straw or no plastic bottle, but then the rest of their lives, they'll do something that's really not healthy for the planet. Like if you look at some of the fur coats, if you look at what they wear to award shows, it sends the wrong message, but they want to do better. And again, I think that, I try to get a lot of influencers and celebrities involved. A lot of them don't necessarily mean bad. They just don't know, what to really do. So it's about educating them too. And it's not just about educating average people. I think it's really about educating everybody. And obviously, every industry is going to have some bad eggs. There's some corrupt charities. So we really have to, dig through the bad to find the good. And I'm very proud that, we donate to 48 charities. And we've been contacted by 3,000 charities, but a lot of them just don't pass the smell test for whatever reason. So it's very important to consider where your money is going. For example, with Australia, a lot of people donated to help the Australian wildlife. Everyone felt very bad for the kangaroos and the koalas, that were burning in the recent Australian fires. But if you look at a lot of what the $90 million raised went to, it was all for fire and rescue and for training, specifically not for animals. And now there's a whole legal battle in Australia because the people thought they were donating to help the cute animals, when in fact it all goes to the fire charities. And now the fire charities have charters that can't be changed. So it's a mess. So if you are going to donate, really do some research, use GuideStar, like look around and see what you're donating to. I hate some of these charities where, you donate money to them and less than 2% of the money actually goes to the cause that you think. Like if you look at the Red Cross, it's a gigantic machine, but very small dollar amounts goes to what you actually think. The rest of it goes to marketing, salaries for the executives. It's crazy how big the charity world has gotten. And the interesting thing is, coming from somebody who is in an industry that most people hate, the penny stock world, the only thing hated worse than penny stocks is charity. So I don't know why I keep choosing these worlds that people hate, but again, for me, it's just about being real, admitting sometimes I make mistakes. Sometimes I lose in the stock market. Sometimes we find a charity and we're all excited and then they don't pass the smell test. So it's about getting better over time and just sharing everything honestly. And I think that's really the key, like building trust, with your audience online and just being real. It's really tough to admit mistakes. A lot of people in the stock trading industry that you think they make money 100% of the time, they don't. Same thing with charities. Like, you can do so much research on a charity, but maybe something goes wrong later on. So all you can do is your best. And then when you mess up, talk about it publicly. People are more forgiving than you think.
Yeah. So let's go back to coronavirus. I think there was something that was submitted by you earlier, is that, how does coronavirus affect climate change? But I think I would phrase it a little bit differently the other way, where how does climate change potentially increase the likelihood of habitat displacement of animals, meaning that they come closer in proximity to us, further crowding of people in especially megacities, increasing bacteria, things like harmful algae, as temperature rises? And how does all of that play into not just the severity, but the frequency of more infectious diseases like coronavirus, COVID?
Yeah, I mean, if you get into it, we basically inadvertently created the coronavirus. We still don't know the exact animals, but they're pretty sure that it came from one of these animal markets in China, in Wuhan. I know there's conspiracy theories that it was created in a government lab, but I tend to go with science, and science pretty much says that it's the animals. And it's because of our eating habits. It's because of the way that we live. And a lot of, kind of just the toxic patterns that we have in our own lives are creating these deadly viruses. And the coronavirus, no different than SARS or MERS or H1N1 flu, we're going to have more and more of these viruses if we don't change. And I'm just hoping that one of these viruses, one of these instances is really going to stick, because if you actually look at the wild animal markets in China, like, they were shut down after SARS, but after a few years, SARS died down and the wild animal markets came back. Now with what's happening with the coronavirus, the wild animal markets supposedly are permanently banned, but we'll see if it comes back in a few years after this virus hopefully dies down. We really need to do better. Otherwise, we're basically creating our own death, like the end of the human species. And a lot of people feel for animals like the rhino or elephants, where poaching is bad and we're killing more and more of them. But until it really hits home, where what if your mother dies? What if your sister dies? What if you get ridiculously sick? Only then do we really have a shot at changing our behaviors. And wild animal markets should be shut down. If you look at a lot of the waste.
If I may inject myself, is that.
Yeah. Sorry, I get into this. This is personal.
Yeah, so I believe that the facts is that there are cases before and patients that have no connection to these wild animal markets. So in other words, the predecessor or the origination or the source may not have been conclusively from the wet markets, as indicated by some false narratives. I just want to make sure that is clearly understood by the audience. My follow-up question around that is, this coronavirus is interesting in the sense that climate change has different kinds of emotional implications, and you're using the sentiment for stock trading. But climate change has issues around fear, and I think fear is a really powerful yet also very debilitating type of an emotion. Coronavirus, like other infectious diseases, also bringing out similar fear as well. Part of that fear is getting manifested into extreme forms of hatred, racism, discrimination. What are your thoughts about that? And what is the reality in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, whether or not it was the animal markets, I mean, obviously the virus started in Wuhan. So a lot of people say, oh, it's all Chinese fault, but it's not. I mean, I recently just did a post on Karmagawa with the wild dog markets in Cambodia. And 50% of the dogs in Cambodia have rabies, and yet the Cambodians are eating them. It's really a worldwide issue. It's not China or Cambodia in particular. I think that we really need to come together as one planet. Obviously, you know, certain political leaders like to pin the blame on certain countries. I don't think that's necessarily the truth. I think that we really should unite as, you know, one species. I think that we have a lot more potential if we do come together and we don't try to pin country versus country, and instead we work together. I was a philosophy major. Maybe I'm a little too idealistic, but I think that it's possible, you know, especially in this day and age with social media. And we just have to recognize, like, this is not about any one part of the world. This is global. And now, you know, at least the coronavirus, and this is sad, but it is breaking out globally. So everyone is experiencing the same problem now.
Well, again, I'm not in support at all, because I'm mostly vegetarian. But I think it's foolish for us to think that the origination or the source of these infectious diseases is because of simply eating habits. I think it contributes to it. But I think if you look at it from an ecological and ecosystem perspective, it is the fact that climate change and some of the kind of bigger issues is around overlapping boundaries. So if you look at the polar bears and the fact that their ice that they hunt from is melting and is forcing them to come in closer proximity to human villages where it was never done before. Same with the wildfire in Australia. Koalas, kangaroos, generally they're around, but they're not going to come down from the tree and hang out and be in neighborhoods and within human contact. So I guess what I'm saying is these extreme elements of climate change implications is forcing kind of this dangerous intersection of things where you have issues around proximity, culture, and other things that's making it even more dangerous. But I think it is also very important to be very thoughtful about how we speak and the kind of narrative we espouse. Otherwise, we ignite unnecessary fear and discrimination. Would you not agree?
No, 100%. I mean, even with like the you know, wildfires in Australia, some people like to blame it on a few arsonists. And I'm like, come on, do you really think a few arsonists set off millions and millions of acres? Like, did the arsonists create the drought? Did they create the record temperatures that basically made it easier for the fires to spread? And, you know, you have all these climate change deniers who like to make excuse after excuse. But as more and more extreme weather instances happen around the world, people need to start recognizing this pattern. Like you said, with the polar bears and the ice melting, that impacts other stuff. So we really have to recognize everything impacts each other. Like, it's crazy how well our planet can work together, and how badly, you know, when things start to go wrong, how it impacts all of us. And so I think people are going to really be forced to learn a lot about science, and different narratives and different catastrophes, unfortunately, are part of the learning process. And my hope is that, you know, people learn before it's too late. Like, we have this incredible technology, social media, being able to spread information faster than ever before, but we also have more tools at our disposal that's destroying the earth faster than ever before. So which is going to win? Is our education going to win, or is destruction going to win? And I think that's the important question of our time, and that's why talking about this stuff is so helpful.
Well, it's been very interesting, and thank you for your openness and your willingness to have a very interesting dialogue. So today I've been joined by Timothy Sykes, who is the CEO of Millionaire Media. Thank you, Tim.
Hey, thanks for having me again.